This segment of Open Up is brought to you in part by Abeta Weed, the locally owned company that has everything you need for lush, weed-free gardens and lawns, from the smallest backyards to the property of the biggest businesses, and with top quality equipment and products better than the big chains, and they service what they sell. Located on Rosedale Highway, just east of Callaway, across from the promenade. Be loyal, buy local, abetaweed.com.
And Don, also, let's thank some of the sponsors that have been so good to us.
You bet. So many businesses stand with us, and this is one. David Bass, DB and Printing, DB and Company, that is, Printing and Marketing, right behind the Fox Theater, right next to Happy Jacks, and they handle all your marketing needs for every size of business. They've got some of the biggest accounts in the city. They're folks that you can really trust to do an outstanding job for anything you need in the way of printing or marketing. They've done my stuff, and I love it. Also, Cruise Through. Boy, we've got 7 wonderful locations here in Bakersfield, 2 over in Lancaster, Palmdale. And, boy, 5 minutes and you're in and out with a beautifully washed car. Boy, what a great resource we have here for our cars. Legal Shield, you've got all kinds of insurance, car insurance, health insurance, life insurance, legal insurance for just pennies a day. You can have legal protection with any kind of matter, trivial or traumatic. They can help you, and especially with identity theft today. This is something you really want to investigate. LegalShieldAssociates.com.
And we'd like to thank our friends over at Kern Construction and Electric Incorporated, Robert Miller, longtime resident of Bakersfield. Robert delights in remodeling your home or your business. He can be contacted at 661-322-5554. Thank you, Robert. And also, I'd like to say a thank you to one of our viewers. It's her birthday tomorrow. Her name is Michaela Rain. So happy birthday, Michaela, and thank you for watching. And speaking of watching, you can find us on Facebook, Open Up with Don and Tina. So.
All right, Al Pacino.
Woo!
Tell us about him.
Long awaited,
Don.
Don.
You have talked about this for so long, getting him on the air.
Yes, and I'm so delighted, Don. And of course, we know it is not Al Pacino, but it is his movie Double.
And he looks like him. I'm sitting here looking like.
I'm so glad. Yes, he does, Don. And he's been in doubling, and he's going to share with us some of the amazing times he's had with Al. Make us jealous anyway. So, welcome.
And his wife, Nettie.
Yes, welcome Rick Reyna and Nettie Reyna.
Thank you for having
Welcome
us.
to Open Up. And now you are founders and directors of Rallies for Christ.
Rallies for Christ, yes. our
Okay,
ministry.
but right now we got to talk about Al Pacino.
Come
We'll
on.
talk in a second. He goes, "Come on, Don."
So how does a guy get to be Al Pacino's double? How did
Well,
that
that's
happen?
amazing. You know, I got a phone call one day from my agent, and she said Michael Mann is one of Hollywood's greatest directors.
He sure is.
And Dante Spigante is one of the greatest DP. They're in town. They're making 2 movies, and the stars are Al Pacino will be in both, Robert De Niro, and a whole bunch of other stars.
That
Crowe.
movie was Heat.
That was
Yes.
Heat.
Yeah.
And the second movie was The Insider with Russell Crowe.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Terrific.
my agent called and said, "Hey, we want to send you on this audition." So I remember that day. I went to Hollywood. I went to an audition, and I walked into a room something like this. It was amazing. I walked into this room, and there were 6 other guys standing in there, and I looked at those 6 guys, and I said to myself, "Wow, we all look the same." I said, "Whoa, I didn't know all these guys were going to be here." Long story short, it was the first day of shooting for the first movie, Heat. And they needed a stand-in photo double, somebody that can run for him, drive for him, do a lot of the scenes that they didn't want Al to do personally. So I went into this room, and Michael Mann walked in, Dante Spigante walked in, and they took us to other rooms. We did camera tests, and Al Pacino was there that day, and it was like a 6-hour-long process.
Wow.
At the end of the night, it was already midnight, and they brought us all back into this room, and Michael Mann started at that side of the line, and he shook the guy's hand and said, "Thanks for coming, but you can go home." Well, he went all the way down the row, and he got to me, and he stuck his hand out and said, "Rick, you got the job. You can stay." Well, I didn't know what he meant. You can stay. We literally started working that night. We actually left that place, got in a van, went to our first location, and started shooting. And I tell you, Don, Tina, it was an amazing experience. I was to start, my movie career off. Before that, God spoke to me, my wife, and said, "I want to begin to open the door for you to begin to be two things in Hollywood. Number one, I want you to be my minister. I want you to be my voice in Hollywood. And number two, I'm going to open up doors for you to begin to act and do things and learn things." Didn't know what he was talking about then. So
Yes.
I said, "Well, God, how exciting, but I don't know nobody." God said, "Don't worry about it. I know everybody." And so I want to say this, starting off this TV show right now. I had a word from God. I begin to treasure words.
Yes.
He gave me a word, Don. He says, "I know everybody. Let me drive." So, long story short, about a week after that, I went to a cattle call. I was, a cattle call is when they're going to do a movie and they need like 1,000 extras.
Right.
And I went to this cattle call and I said, "What am I doing here?" I mean, I just felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to be in a cattle call. But just then, somebody walked up to me and said, "Are you Latino?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I know a woman who has an agency here in Hollywood called Latin Connection, and she's looking for some quality Latinos who she thinks they can go to another level." He gave me her card. I called her. About a week later, met with her, and that's how I really got into the industry as an actor. It was through her agency I got to go to this audition as an Al Pacino double. So that was awesome, and we started filming the movie Heat. And I seen God's hand in such a way because Al literally took me in and he called me his son. And every day we would come to the set, they would put two chairs together and I would sit with him. I would go get his coffee. And I want to say this about the minister part. I remember every day he would say, "Rick, go get me a coffee with a twist," meaning a piece of lemon on the coffee, on the edge of the coffee cup. And I would go, Don. And I would get his cup of coffee. And I would pray over that cup of coffee before I gave it to him every single day. I began to speak the blessing of God. I began to speak life to him. In the Bible, they would bring the apostles piece of cloth. And the apostles would pray for the piece of cloth. And the people would take them home back to the sick. And they would lay the piece of cloth on the sick. And the sick would get healed. Well, I took that same word and I began to pray over his coffee. As he would drink and sip his coffee with a twist, his life was beginning to change. Well, I seen something. I seen the favor of God come upon my life in those moments. The first movie we probably shot 4 to 6 months, almost every day, different locations.
In the Los Angeles area?
In the Los Angeles, San Francisco. And but what I'm trying to say is this, how the favor came upon me with him, where he opened up his heart and his life to me, where I was able to sit with him every day and be a friend. And what's an amazing thing about Al Pacino, if you've seen the movie Scarface or The Godfather,
Yeah.
I mean, man, what a powerful man.
Right.
You hate to meet him in a dark alley, right? You might, meet my little friend or something, pull out his machine gun.
Right.
But Al Pacino can literally sit in the chair all day and not say a word and be very quiet. And nobody would speak to him except me or the director. And he was very kind. But once they called him to the set and yelled action, you better get out of his way, because literally he would turn into a whole different person. And I seen that. I seen the word begin to work for me in Hollywood. I was sharing with Tina last night that we were filming at NBC and we were filming a big scene, and Michael Mann got a little upset about something. And he said, "Well, I want everybody in this room now, all the first and all the second and all the cameramen." Well, the first meaning the main actors, and the seconds, all the stand-in, the doubles and stuff like that. Because he was trying to set up a shot and the people weren't getting it. Well, I was already in that room. Al Pacino was already in that room. And the other actors weren't, and their doubles weren't. So it was taking quite long. And Michael Mann said, "Where's everybody at?" And Al Pacino looked up and said, "Michael, I'm here and Rick's here." And Michael Mann said, "Well, that's because you're Al Pacino and he's Rick Reyna. He's the best double in the industry."
Ooh.
Now, I heard those words, and Al put his arm around me and he hugged me, and people kind of they understood what he said. But all I could think at that moment was, here's another word being fulfilled.
Spoken.
And that's the way me and my wife have governed our ministry in now making movies, are based on words that we have received from God. And we begin to see that, Don and Tina, take off like a rocket in our life. And then we finished the first movie, Heat, and about 2 years later, I got a call from my agent again and said, Al Pacino's in town. He's personally asking for you, if you would come back. And this story really blesses my life. I remember the very first day of shooting of the movie, The Insider.
Let's hold that
Okay.
for the break. And,
Yes.
and also, there's a very fine line between, let's say ministering to people of famous names
Yeah.
and then name dropping.
Yeah.
And to avoid that, because then you alienate the very people you're trying to reach, because now you're just using them like everybody else
Yep.
is using them. So
Yep.
let's talk about that when
Sure.
we come back. And we will be right back.